10th NAS final showdown. PDP, Labour Party and others surrender. A two-horse race is imminent in the hot chase for the speakership of the incoming House of Representatives. It is 48 hours to the inauguration of the 10th National Assembly, and so the die is finally cast. At the beginning of the race, which came shortly after the February 25th general elections, over 12 ranking lawmakers indicated interest in the speakership of the 10th House. They include Rep. Ahmad Idris from Plateau State, Rep. Maki Yilman from Jigawa State, Rep. Adamu Yusuf from Plateau State, Rep. Benjamin Kalu from Abbas State, Rep. Peter from Edo State, Rep. Mukta Aliyu from Borno State, Rep. Soli Sada from Katsina State, Rep. Tunji Olawunyi from Kwara State, Rep. Abbas from Kaduna State, Rep. Aminu Sani from Zamfara State. The leader of the 9th House, Rep. Ado Doguwa from Kano, and Rep. Miriam Onoha from Imo State. But on Monday, the ruling All Progressive Congress, APC, made a choice in Abbas as the Speaker nominee and Kalu as the Deputy Speaker nominee, respectively. While Abbas represents Zaria Federal Constituency of Kaduna State, Northwest, Kalu represents Bid Federal Constituency of Abia State, Southeast. Unfortunately, fury, acrimony, and trepidation greeted their nominations as the rest of the aspirants vehemently opposed it. Their chief reasons ranged from lack of consultation before the consensus announcement to some perception that Abbas was a dark horse amongst the 360 lawmakers of the House. But the reasons swiftly received knocks from many lawmakers-elect who poo-poohed the submissions, saying Abbas, who sponsored 74 bills, had over 20 signed into law by former President Muhammadu Buhari, and cannot be unknown amongst his colleagues. To this end, the aggrieved aspirants were forced into a group of 7 G7 with the aim of giving Abbas a good run in the speakership bid. But as at the time for the inauguration inching closer, the ranks of the G7, made up of Was, Betera, Gadi, Soli, Onoha, Jaji, and Dogoa, have depleted, with some of them getting convinced by the candidacies of Abbas and Kalu. Dogoa, Yilman, and Olawunyi were the first aspirants to join the group and joined the Abbas campaign, trailing with a strong call on their contemporaries to follow suit. Recall that at the time, members of G7 had enjoyed the tremendous support of the opposition parties under the aegis of the greater majority. Though members of the G7 were insistent, vowing to nominate one of them to run, they have since lost steam, leaving only Wase and Betera to their faith. It was learned that Betara recently met with Vice President Kashim Shettima. They are both from the Northeast, where he was cancelled to drop his ambition for the APC anointed candidates. Outside the meeting with the vice president, sources said he had cut a deal for himself and his sponsors. The deal reportedly included retaining his position as the chairman, appropriation committee in the 10th House, and the chairmanship of 30 committees for his supporters. An impeccable inside source who craved anonymity said Betara, who had agreed to deal to back the Abbas candidacy a few days ago, however, reneged on the promise in the belief that permutations in the Senate may still favor him. In the Senate, there is also a strong opposition against the candidacy of Senator Godswill Akpabio, who is the APC preferred choice for the Senate president from the camp of Senators Orji Uzor Kalu, Abdulaziz Yari, and Osita Izunaso, who are also running for the office. Betara was going to announce his withdrawal from the race at the 11th hour, bearing his incessant run to the end. For the immediate past Deputy Speaker of the House, Wase, who is also a member of the G7, there is no going back whether he wins or not. Recall that Wase had, during the validatory session of the House on Wednesday, declared that his speakership ambition was premised on a prophetic utterance of his political leader and former governor of Plateau State, Solomon La. Besides, sources said Wase was further propelled by his erstwhile position in the sense that, having risen to the height of occupying the number 2 seat in the parliament, it would be somewhat demotion to remain in the House as a floor member. They added that Wase is likely to be the only one to contest against the run of play. Of course, I want to appreciate my political leaders, among whom I would say is Solomon La, who, when I was contesting in 2007, I went to him and he prophesied the number of times I will come to this assembly, and I will tell this crowd and to the world that he said I will come to the assembly in the number of times, and prophesies even the number of leadership positions that I will attain and the deputy speakership. And he prophesied next when I return, and I believe I will be the speaker, and I believe, Inshallah, I'll be the speaker of the Green Chambers, he had declared. Meanwhile, the candidacy of Abbas and Kalu have continued to gain support. Recall that the greater majority, which was later divided on the choice of candidates, has returned to the queue behind Abbas and Kalu, duting the G7. In an interview, the leader of the Labour Party LP caucus for the 10th Assembly and one of the spokesmen for the greater majority, Honorable Victor Ogene, marshalled out reasons Abbas and Kalu were the lawmakers' choice for the 2 presiding offices. He said, beyond mere endorsements, I think that the emergence of both men as leaders of the Emergence 10th Assembly of the House of Representatives is already a fait accompli. Why? In spite of the wave of the condemnation that attended their adoption, they have remained focused and kept their eyes on the ball. In fact, I can say, with the very emphasis at my disposal, that both men ran the most pragmatic campaigns in terms of engagement with members-elect. They were neither laid back nor sat in any front zone as anointed candidates. Besides, the Right Honourable Aliyu Mukhtar, whose aspiration attracted the most support from both returning and new members because of his own personage, the duo of T.J. Abbas and Benjamin Kalu eventually earned their own stripes. Let me reiterate, I had earlier explained the reason d'etre for the opposition of their candidature in the early days of their adoption by the APC. But rather than relax and bask in the euphoria of adoption, they stepped up consultations among members-elect, showcasing in the process what the famed novelist Chinua Achebe described as solid personnel achievements. For Abbas, who is one legislative cycle of 4 years, sponsored a total of 74 bills, to 22 of which received presidential assent, and Kalu with over 40 bills, both men, I dare say, appear to have fulfilled the condition precedent for their emergence as Speaker and Deputy Speaker. Indeed, for the Abbas-Kalu ticket, the inclusion of the Southeast in the equation is a masterstroke. Till date, no other speakership and aspirant has offered the zone anything. Then, of course, the much-hyped G7 eventually failed to live up to expectations in terms of providing a credible alternative leading up to the announcement.